They built the dungeon beneath the castle for monsters. That's what the soldiers said. Iron gates, reinforced stone, chains forged with silver threaded through the metal, sigils carved into the walls to suppress power older than kingdoms. And at the very bottom, they kept him. The giant alpha king of the northern clans. The one who was supposed to have burned 3 fortresses to ash. The one who tore through battalions like storm wind through dry grass. The one no one could kill. So they chained him instead. Maris had never seen him, only heard the stories. He snapped a man's spine with one hand. He doesn't speak. He growls. He's not fully human. Don't look into his eyes. She worked in the lower kitchens, carried food to guards, cleaned blood from stone when interrogations went wrong. She knew the sound of fear in men's voices. And when soldiers talked about the Alpha King, it wasn't hatred. It was fear. The first time she saw the cage, it wasn't intentional. A guard dropped a tray near the stairwell. She picked it up and followed the corridor further than she was meant to. Down the air. Changed. Colder. Heavier. Alive. The dungeon chamber was vast. Torches flickered against black stone. And there behind layered iron bars. He sat. Massive. Still. Chains ran from his wrists to the walls, from his shoulders to the floor, thick as ship anchors. His head was lowered. Dark hair fell past his shoulders. Bare arms marked with old scars and fresh restraints. He did not look broken. He looked contained. Don't stand there. The guard beside her spoke sharply. He smells fear. I'm not afraid, she said quietly. The guard laughed. They all say that. The tray trembled in his hands. He shoved it toward the bars. The meat spilled across the stone. The Alpha King didn't move, not until the guard stepped back. Then slowly he lifted his head. Silver eyes. Not wild. Not monstrous. Clear. Watching. Measuring. Count. Leave it, the guard muttered. He'll eat eventually. But he didn't. He watched. The guard dragged Maris away. But that night she couldn't stop thinking about the way he hadn't lunged, hadn't growled, hadn't tried to break the chains. He had simply watched, like he was waiting. The next day, she volunteered to bring the tray. The guard laughed again. Suit yourself. No one lasts long down there. She carried fresh bread, not thrown, placed carefully. When she reached the chamber, the torches flickered violently. As if reacting to something unseen. He was standing this time, and he was enormous. Taller than any man she'd ever seen. Broader than the iron bars that held him. The chains groaned as he shifted. She stopped a safe distance from the cage. I brought food. Silence. His eyes fixed on her. Predatory. Ancient. But not chaotic. She stepped closer. Every guard on the upper level went still. One wrong move he could lunge. The chains would hold. Probably. She knelt. Slowly. And slid the bread between the bars. Close enough that he would need to come forward. Close enough that he could reach her if the chains stretched. He did not move immediately. He studied her. Then he stepped forward. The chains tightened. Metal screamed. Guards reached for weapons. Maris did not run. The Alpha King lowered himself. Down. Until one massive knee touched the stone. Then the other. He bowed his head. Not to the guards. Not to the chains. To her. The entire dungeon fell silent. One of the guards whispered, "What did he just do?" Maris' breath shook. She didn't understand either. The Alpha King lifted his gaze again. And for the first time he spoke. "You came back." His voice was deep, controlled, not feral. "You're not afraid?" "No," she said. A pause. I don't think you're what they say. Something flickered behind his eyes. Not rage. Recognition. And somewhere in the castle, above, the torches dimmed. That was the moment everything changed. Because the giant Alpha King did not bow to kings. He did not bow to conquerors. He did not bow to chains. But he bowed to her. And the guards would never forget it. Word spread through the castle by nightfall. The giant had bowed. Not roared. Not lunged. Not shattered. Bone. Bowed. The soldiers didn't know what frightened them more. Maris was summoned the next morning. The war council chamber was cold, even with the fire burning. Generals lined the long table. Steel. Scars. Suspicion. At the head sat Lord Vaylor, the regent who ruled the conquered northern territories. You went into the lower dungeon twice, he said without greeting. Yes, my lord. And he did not attack? No. Vaylor's fingers tapped slowly against the table. What did you say to him? Nothing special. That is not possible. But it was. She had brought bread. And she had not. Trembled. That seemed to be enough. She returned to the dungeon that evening. Not ordered. Not forced. By choice. The guards watched her descend with visible unease. He's been restless, one muttered. He hasn't touched the meat. The chamber was darker tonight. The torches burned lower. He stood again when she entered. Chains pulled tight across his chest and shoulders. His presence filled the space like a storm, held inside stone. You shouldn't come, he said. His voice echoed deeper now. Why? They are watching. So are you. A faint shift of expression. Not a smile, but something close. She knelt again. This time she brought water. Clean. Fresh. She set it closer to him than before. You can't reach it, he observed. You could if you wanted to. The chains trembled slightly. Not from effort. From restraint. He could test them. He didn single quotes t. Instead. He lowered himself again. Closer. His silver eyes never left hers. You don't believe I started the war, he said. It wasn't a question. No. Why? Because monsters don't warn people to stay away. His gaze sharpened. I warned them. She nodded. They burned your border villages first. Double quote silence. Heavy. You were there? He asked. No. But I saw the refugees. The guards had called it collateral damage. But she remembered the way the northern survivors refused to speak against him. Even after defeat. They needed a villain, he said at last. The Southern Crown wanted northern iron, northern land, northern control. And you were in the way. Yes. The chains creaked softly as he shifted. They couldn't kill me. The bloodline prevents it. Bloodline? My line carries the bond. Bond to what? His eyes flicked upward, toward the ceiling, toward the forest beyond the castle walls, to the first wolves. The air in the chamber seemed to thicken. They are not beasts, he continued quietly. They are guardians, bound to my family for generations. And now? They wait. For you. For war. She swallowed. If you're freed, will you start it again? No. The answer came without hesitation. But if they harm my people further? The torches flickered violently. The chains tightened. Metal screamed under the strain. He closed his eyes, forced himself still. When he opened them again, the silver had softened. I do not want more blood. The sincerity in his voice unsettled her more than any growl could have. Footsteps echoed above. Guards shifting. Listening. He leaned slightly closer. They will use you. How? To test me. Her stomach tightened. They will hurt you to see if I break the chains. Silence. You won't, she said. His jaw tightened. If they think you matter. The words lingered. Dangerous. You shouldn't matter. But I do. She whispered. The air changed. Not loud. Not dramatic. But something deep in the stone vibrated. His breathing slowed. Why? He asked. She hadn't expected that. I don't know, she admitted. Maybe because you bowed. For the first time he almost smiled. I bowed because you did not look at me like prey. Another pause. I bowed because you looked at me like a man. The chains rattled faintly, not from struggle. From something else. Something responding. A sudden scream cut through the dungeon corridor. High. Sharp. One of the guards. Maris flinched. The Alpha King went completely still. Predatory still. Boots thundered down the stairwell. 2 soldiers dragged a bleeding northern prisoner into the chamber. Let him watch, one guard snarled. Let the giant see what happens to rebels. The prisoner was thrown against the stone. Maris stepped back instinctively. The Alpha King did not roar. He did not lunge. But the air, fractured. The chains began to glow faintly silver. The torches bent inward as if pulled by wind. Stop, he said quietly. No one listened. The guard raised his blade. The Alpha King looked at Maris. Not the guard. Her. Step back, he told her. She obeyed. The blade began to fall. The chains snapped. Not fully, but one link shattered. The sound echoed like thunder in the chamber. The wolves outside the castle howled. Every guard froze. The Alpha King stood to his full height, one arm free, silver light tracing beneath his skin. He did not attack the soldiers. He moved once. Fast. Unnatural. He positioned himself between the blade and the prisoner. The weapon shattered against his forearm, metal exploding like glass. He did not strike back. He only stood there. Shielding. The guard stumbled backward. Panic rising. Lord Vaylor's voice echoed from the stairwell above. Seal the chamber! Heavy iron gates slammed into place. Reinforcements locking. The Alpha King did not pursue. He looked at Maris. His breathing heavy, controlled only by force of will. I told you, he said softly. They will use you. The broken chain hung from his wrist. The first fracture in his prison. And now they were afraid. Not of him, but of what he would do for her. By morning, the castle was no longer pretending. The guards did not descend alone anymore. They came in groups. Armed. Afraid. Lord Vaylor stood at the upper balcony overlooking the dungeon chamber. Hands clasped behind his back. The experiment is over, he declared. Maris stood below. Wrists bound. Not roughly, but deliberately. Used. Exactly as the Alpha King had warned. He responds to her. Vaylor continued. Which means she is leverage. The giant stood. At the center of the chamber. One broken chain. Still hanging from his wrist. The others. Intact. For now. His silver eyes were fixed on Maris. Frantic. Not wild. Controlled. Too. Controlled. Release her, he said. The words were calm. That frightened them more than shouting would have. Vaylor smiled thinly. You are in no position to make demands. He gestured to the execution. Block. Place her there. The guards hesitated. The wolves outside began to howl. Low. Building. Maris felt the sound in her ribs, felt something older stirring beneath the stone. The Alpha King closed his eyes. Just once. He opened them again. They were no longer silver. They were white. Blazing. Double quotes. Do not, he warned. The air shifted. The sigils carved into the dungeon walls flickered. Vaylor lifted his hand. The executioner raised the blade. And in that suspended second Maris stepped forward. Before the guards could force her, before fear could root her in. Place. She moved. Toward him, not away. Blade froze midder. What are you doing? Baylor shouted. Maris reached the edge of his chains and placed her bound hands against his chest. The dungeon fell silent. Not quiet. Silent. Like the world itself had drawn breath and refused to release it. I'm not afraid of you, she said softly. His massive form trembled. With rage, with restraint unraveling. You should be, he replied. No. Her voice didn't shake. They made you into a weapon. Her fingers tightened against him. But you never were. The chains began to glow. White cracks of light racing along the metal. Their sigils on the walls burned brighter than shattered. Vela stepped back. Kill her, he shouted. No one moved, because the wolves had entered. Not through doors, not through corridors. Through shadow, through the broken sigils. Massive, silver shapes materializing along the edges of the chamber. Eyes, bright. Ancient. Loyal. Not. Toward. To him. The Alpha King lowered himself again. In the center of the chaos, on one knee. Chains snapping one by one as they hit the stone. He bowed his head. Not in submission. In vow. I will not let them use you, he said. The dungeon shook. Stone cracked overhead. Drew a hidden blade and lunged toward Maris. He didn't make it 3 steps. Alpha King moved once. The motion was almost invisible. One moment he was kneeling. The next, he stood between her and Vela. The regent's blade struck his chest and shattered. The wolves surged forward, not attacking the soldiers, only blocking escape. Vela stumbled backward, terror finally breaking through his arrogance. You'll destroy everything, he spat. The Alpha King's voice was no longer thunder. It was steel. I protect what is mine. He turned to Maris, not possessive. Not consuming. Asking. Double quotes. Will you stand with me? Not for him. With him. This was the choice. The real one. Not forced. Not desperate. Chosen. Maris stepped beside him. Not behind. Will. The final chains dissolved. Not snapped. Torn. Unmade. The wolves bowed. The soldiers dropped their weapons. Because in that moment, it was clear. He had never been there. Monster. He had been their shield. The castle gates opened before nightfall. Not by force. By fear. Vela fled south before sunset. The remaining commanders bent the knee willingly. The northern prisoners were freed. The wolves returned to the forests. Not wild. Watchful. At dusk, the Alpha King stood at the edge of the battlements, overlooking the northern lands. No chains. No cage. Only wind and open sky. Maris joined him. You could take the throne back tonight, she said. I could. But you won't. He looked down at her. The silver had returned to his eyes, calm. You taught me something, he said quietly. What? That power does not need to roar. A pause. I bowed because you saw me. She reached for his hand. He let her. Carefully. As if he still feared breaking something fragile. You're not fragile, she said, reading the tension in him. I know. But he still held her gently. The wolves howled once more in the distance. Not in warning. In acknowledgement. The giant Alpha King was no longer caged. Not by iron, not by lies. Not by war. And he did not kneel to kings. He did not kneel to fear. But when Mara stepped in front of him and met his gaze, he bowed. Because this time it was not captivity. It was choice.